For some reason that completely eludes me, a lot of fans seem to really dislike the gameplay from the PS2 era games, but I thought it was the best the series has ever had. And yes, there was of course a commenter on the original review who tried to discredit my entire critique because they preferred one style and I prefer another. It's like trying to discredit someone for liking Sonic Adventure more than Sonic 2. Completely moronic.
You retarded little retards! Retards!
In the PS2 entries, the combos were much smoother and flowed much more satisfyingly than any other entry before or since. Each character had multiple movesets to make use of to help distinguish the characters further beyond special moves. They experimented with new mechanics like death traps and stage hazards, and the 3D movement meant the player couldn't just spam projectiles or teleports because sidestepping made avoiding those kinds of attacks trivial, requiring the player to properly plan and strategize their use of such attacks. Sure, styles being swapped around between games took away some of the identity of the characters using them, but it was still a lot better than everyone having the same generic 3-hit combos for 4 games. MK 2011 takes the series back to a 2D perspective, as far as I can tell, just because that's how the series used to be, and those are the games people remembered most fondly. But this is a dangerous thought process because it leads to going back on innovation, like how people want RE2 make to have fixed camera angles again. The series had improved, moved on, but we took a step back into a more archaic system. Normal attacks are no longer based on high, medium, low, punch and kick, but rather a button mapped to each limb like in Tekken. Combos are now short, slow, and incredibly awkward looking with a complete lack of impact. As a result of the attacks being so unsatisfying to use, special attacks become emphasised because it's the only cathartic impact regular gameplay has to offer. Speaking of catharsis, fatalities return in their traditional form after Armageddon's Build-A-Fatality,
Fatality.
and DCU's toned down fatalities and heroic brutalities. The finishes here are the most violent they've ever been, some to the point of being totally meaningless. I get that, like many others, Johnny Cage combines both of his MK2 finishes into one, but why bother when just a decapitation is enough and the rest is completely pointless? Don't get me wrong though, most of these are really damn good. The level of detail in the gore is astounding and some of them are really damn creative. But there is such a thing as taking a good thing too far and ruining it, such as bringing back finishers from Superman, the Joker and Quan Chi, ratcheting up the violence and thinking that automatically makes it better despite it being lazy and ruining the impact. The Joker's fatality was one of the best ever because it just exuded character. Slapping it onto a different character who doesn't suit it at all and adding excessive gore doesn't make it better. Grow up. Speaking of ruining fatalities, they brought back that stupid distance element to finishers. Yes, there's a practice mode for that, but it's so irritating having to align yourself properly, holding block to avoid jumping or moving into the wrong position, and having the face button do an attack if you do it wrong. You can use different camera angles to mask moving the characters into position, why is this so hard? The PS2 games did it right with no distance malarkey and a fatality style, which stops you from moving or attacking. Stage fatalities also return, replacing the similar death traps of the PS2 days, and babalities also return for some reason. The power bar returns from DCU, but altered. The bar is now split into 3 segments. Each player starts with one segment filled, and whoever lands the first attack automatically gets a second. The player can spend 1 segment to enhance a special move, 2 to perform a combo breaker, or all 3 to perform an X-ray. It's not a lot, but I do admit it does add a little more strategy to the rather basic gameplay we have now. But what are X-ray moves, you ask? X-ray moves are a Marvel 3 style super attack that do a ton of damage in an over-the-top brutal animation with an X-ray to show how the move ruins the opponent's body down to their bones. It makes sense to have super moves like this, but there are a few problems with the system. First, each character only gets 1, which when coupled with the fact that some of them are a bit too long, means they wear out their welcome rather quickly, just like everyone only having 1 intro and outro animation. The other problem is the level of brutality showcased, as all of them would cripple if not outright kill the opponent. I mean, look at that, Baraka impales a guy's skull, you'd never survive that. I feel like these moves and this X-ray tech should have been implemented into fatalities instead. And before you complain that I'm trying to bring realism into a fantasy fighting game, keep in mind that the level of violence is completely inconsistent because injuries just like those, or even less, kill people when done as a fatality. The distinction between the two moves is totally arbitrary and has no logical explanation within the game's setting. I'm just asking for a little consistency here, is that too much? And one last thing that I just cannot stand is the ridiculous difficulty in battling bosses and sub-bosses. The ludicrously hard final boss that can just no-sell attacks whenever it feels like it is an archaic concept that should have died once the genre started to move away from arcades. There is absolutely no reason for the bosses to be this cheap if the developers aren't getting any money from it. And don't be surprised if Warner Bros has NetherRealm implement a microtransaction system for retries in arcade mode to simulate the nostalgic feel of an arcade cabinet in a future title. And whoever the hell decided that the boss character should get X-rays that take 2/3 of the player's health, fuck that guy, and fuck Ermac's Impossible to Avoid X-Ray 2.